The sound works, right? Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Oh, good. Everybody's being so quiet. I couldn't tell. I thought my system didn't work.
So George mentioned that he might not be able to join tonight. He's in New Jersey or is traveling. I don't see Jim Walton. I would have thought he would be on.
AJ, I'm not going to be able to stay around for the whole meeting. It's going to go off, but I'll stay around. So
Okay. Okay. Is there anything in particular that you want to make sure we cover while we have you?
Well, I don't know. Our agenda is to examine the draft budget. Is that true? Or
So kind of the big things are review the budget. I have a draft that George shared of the annual report and some items that will just kind of need to have some discussion about how we want to address them this year. I would say that there's a couple other items, but I think those are the big ones.
well, proceed. I don't see
Okay.
anything that's
Okay.
more important than anything else. But maybe Lenny wants to be taken, get out of here or something.
All right, Becky.
I asked Lenny to come tonight.
Yep.
He had made, as we were talking about different things in his budget, he's made a request that the equipment lines in his budget be blended under one equipment line, but he can explain it better than I can.
Okay. All right, so why don't we start on that? I guess in the interim, is there any chance, does somebody have Jim Walton's number? Can we give him a call?
I'll call him.
Okay, thank you,
And I'll
Susan.
call his cell if you call the house, Susie.
All right.
There he is.
Oh, here he is. We were
Good
just
job,
about to call
Susan.
you, Jim.
Sorry for being late.
No problem, no problem. How's your back?
How are you all?
Was it good? How are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Lenny?
Good.
All right. I think we should get started. So since Lenny's joining us, Jim, Becky was just saying that Lenny has a request for, I guess, sounds like to do some reorganization of the budget for the fire department. Do you want to explain what you're asking for, or what you'd like to do?
Yes, I have three subcategories of SCBA tanks, hose, and fire turnout gear. And I would like to combine it all into equipment because essentially it is equipment. Reason being, it would be easier for me to do purchases from one account than 4 accounts. Another reason would be I look at it as being forced to buy turnout gear every year because right now it's at $4,000 for a set of turnout gear. But if we didn't have the 3 firefighters, next year I wouldn't need to buy turnout gear, but I may need to buy something else like a defibrillator. So,
Okay. So, Becky, could you give me sharing privileges? And I'm going to just show everybody what the lines are that we're talking about. All right.
Becky, I think you're on mute.
Okay.
Go on mute.
Again.
Mm.
So Lenny has recruited 3 new firefighters who have made it all the way through the endless gauntlet that it takes to get fully appointed. And then he has, to his dismay, while the funds are there potentially for him to buy them each new turnout gear, he can't. He can only buy 1 set of turnout gear. And
I
there's
see.
so
But he
My
might have money.
yes,
Go
my
ahead, Lenny.
reasoning, sorry. So my reasoning is now I have 3 new firefighters that, I don't have any money in the gear budget for next year. Well, I would only be able to buy 1 set of turnout gear for the firefighters. They're using used older gear that is out of date, and all 3 firefighters are not the same size as the old gear. So it's pretty obvious that it doesn't fit them properly. So I'm looking at it and it's like, I would prefer I think it would benefit the fire department more having new turnout gear for them than another set of hose that I could postpone for a year to purchase, or an air tank. I just look at it being a lot easier to manage funds if it came out of 1 account than 4 equipment budgets, and
Right.
3 of them would be a subcategory of it. So,
All right. So more flexibility.
yes,
Okay. So we're actually talking about the 4 lines that I'm about to highlight, right? So these would all be 96 through 99 would be consolidated into 1 equipment line.
yes.
Okay. That seems like a reasonable. I'm looking at the police department and right there's a single expenses line. So it seems like a reasonable request that would allow some flexibility. Susie?
I understand the flexibility. I think it's pretty unusual to be able to recruit 3 people in a year. That hasn't happened for a long time, so that's good for the department. But I don't know if, I wonder what other way this could be addressed. I wonder if it's a one-off to get the equipment for 3 and leave the other lines alone, given that some of this is about maintaining the equipment in the department. But if you feel like those lines, the maintenance has already been done for those other articles and it would just be a one-off, I guess that could be another way to see it.
Okay, Jim Walton?
Yeah. So we're talking about the 4 highlighted rows combining. Is that the proposal?
Right, the proposal would be to
Yeah.
consolidate that into 1 equipment line.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see an issue with doing this. I mean, I'm looking at the totals. We're looking at 18,000 for the total of these lines. I mean, I think we could at least get them to 2. I guess a concern I have in general, and I think it directly applies to this, is I think we've been gradually adding accounts. We don't take away accounts, we gradually add accounts. And And some of these accounts can be very small. And my concern would be the more accounts we have, we talk about transparency, but kind of work the other way around. If you have too many lines, too much information, you don't see anything. You can get buried in stuff. And we also take away flexibility from department heads when there are opportunities to move things out maybe a little bit. They can say, okay, maybe we can make do with not doing this year, and then we'll put more into this area this year. So it gives department heads a little bit more flexibility having fewer lines. Now, again, there's a balance. We don't want too few lines. That doesn't tell us anything either, but getting the right number, I think is important. And I think right here, I think we have too many lines here in this area for fire. I think $2,000 or $2,000 or $4,400, those are too small lines. And to be able to, for a department head to figure out a year in advance, each one of those lines and make sure it doesn't go above it, is challenging. I think we should put more focus on the overall budget for the department. And that's as opposed to individual $2,000 lines.
Mhm. Bob?
Yeah, just for some clarification from Lenny, and please forgive me because I'm on my iPad and I don't even know how Zoom works on the iPad, as you'll probably soon find out. However, I see the lines, the 4 lines, and the equipment line. What does that cover, Lenny? At present?
Pretty much all other equipment. So like flashlights or anything I see fit, road cones, flashlights. Obviously a set of turnout gear is about $3,800, not counting boots, not counting helmet or gloves. So I got all the receipts. It goes fast and it doesn't seem like I have much to show for it by the end of the year here.
Well, here's the thing. What I'm thinking is that we put these individual lines in there at per request of Walter, because he saw a kind of a continuous need to replace the tanks and the fire hoses and the turnout gear. And we thought that these numbers were kind of reasonable for what he anticipated at that time. If there's an unusual circumstance such as that you described, where new firefighters who come aboard and they need turnout gear, one option for us would be to just transfer from cash the additional money you need for this coming year to provide those people with their gear. So, and then keep things the same. And that way we have more transparency, and I think that's a good thing. I don't really, I understand what Jim Walton was saying, but I also think that this is a good way for us to come to understand what these expenses are and why we're paying what we're paying. I do understand your need for more money, and I'm proposing that we might consider funding that need by a transfer, because it's a one-shot deal, more or less. Would that be satisfactory to you?
You mean, so coming next year, I'd have to go forward for another set of turnout gear for 2 individuals?
No, we would transfer the money to cover that expense in addition to the one that you've got covered with your budget. And then your budget would remain the same in the coming years. We'd have a one-time transfer of say $8,000 for 2 more sets of gear.
And where is so I'm gonna have to go to you separately just to go from equipment to buy turnout gear?
Well, I don't see it that way. I see that nothing changes except you have an extraordinary need this year for additional funds. But I'm just saying, I don't see why we'd want to combine all these lines together. We can provide I think the committee could provide the extra resources for you this year, because it's an extraordinary event, right? Is it not a one-time deal?
It could happen next year. Who knows with Lenny's?
Yeah. But Bob, don't you think it's a little arbitrary that, like, how we have these separate, I mean, I think we'd all agree, at least 3 of these lines, 96 through 98, are sort of examples of types of equipment that the department needs to replenish on some kind of a schedule. I mean, it's not like we see that kind of breakdown in the expense line for the police department, We don't see that, I don't believe, in the highway department where we're seeing
Yeah, I take,
individual
I take
line
your
items for different types.
I'm not gonna argue against that. I think that's a good point. I just think the reason that this thing historically arrived at its present configuration was because these were capital expenses, and that was, the fire chief had to go through an elaborate process to get, provide funds for it. So then we developed this, we built it into the budget in this way. So
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, why, why fix it if it ain't broke, if we could just provide extra funds? But I'm not unaware that your argument
Yeah.
makes sense too.
Okay. All right, let's do Jim Walton.
Yeah, maybe did I miss something? Did Lenny say he needed to increase his overall budget? Or did he say it's just the one line and he'd like underspend one line and spend more on the other line to make up the difference?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
understanding.
so,
Lenny, can you confirm?
and Bob, what you're talking about is making is basically increasing the fire department's budget. What you
No.
just proposed is increasing their budget for this year.
If that's what it
And
sounded
I
like.
guess I just don't see a need for that. And I think this just spells out the flaw in having too many small lines in a budget. It reduces the ability for a department head to do their job. I think every department is going to have idiosyncrasies every year. Things are going to pop up everywhere that will happen this year and won't happen for the next 4 years. That happens in some of these budgets. And if we have to find a way to identify every small item that might pop up every few years, I just think we're going to get buried in stuff, buried in analysis, and not really able to see through the forest for the trees.
Easy?
I wanted a clarification from Bob when he said that we would do a transfer. I don't know what that transfer means.
Well, what I was referring to was something I think we've done several times in the past for a non-recurring special situation. We would fund part of the budget on a one-time basis with reserves like free cash, but we may keep the budget for the future intact. The only concern I have, answering to Jim and AJ's comments, were we set up these revolving accounts, or these accounts, to anticipate what was going to be required for the different items that are listed there. And so now it's going to become just a one pot of money. And what will happen when some of these other items need replacement? That's the question I have. These are supposed to be visible to us, so we can make adjustments in them as we see fit when prices go up or the regulations change or whatnot. And now we won't have that visibility, and we won't have that control. It will just be providing a greater, the total sum to the fire chief. But I didn't see that it was going to raise the budget for perpetuity. I see it as just a one-shot augmentation to the amount of money we provide this year. And that would leave the other accounts intact because they were set up. And I don't see, if the fire hoses need to be replaced at a rate of $2,000 a year, is that going to change if we draw it down? I mean, it's going to be depleted. So that's my logic. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking.
Becky?
I just was wondering, Lenny, if the finance committee says, okay, just one equipment line for FY24, and that'll be like $18,600. If you have that equipment line next year, will you be able to afford all the the 3 sets of turnout gear that you currently need? Because
I'm not
Bob's,
sure. Yeah, I didn't really write that stuff down on a paper. I'm pretty much coming to the argument that I look at a lot of stuff that may or may not be that needs to be replaced at the station. And I think I could do a better job putting resources to the most important things I see, rather than always have to be forced to be buying hose and bottles while we could be potentially neglecting turnout gear for somebody, or an AED, or a boat possibly. The engine on the brush truck seized. So I'm just got that back to running. Now I'm thinking, you know, that the engine's older than me, so I'm looking about what do we got, what would I truly do if that thing didn't work? So I just see kind of forced to, I got these 3 line items that if we didn't have those 3 firefighters, I would still be spending 4,000 on gear if I didn't think we needed to buy $4,000 worth of gear if we didn't have those new firefighters. So I just think it would be better for the town and the department to have more freedom of what I can spend the money on.
And these would be things that you could report on to the finance committee every year when you do your budget. You could say, last year I bought this much turnout gear, this much hose, and these many tanks.
Yes, I mean, I have all, every time I submit a bill or and a warrant, it's all traceable to what I'm spending the money on.
Yep.
I mean, I can lay each receipt out pretty easily.
So if the finance committee wanted to continue to be sure that you invested in these things, you can do that.
Yes, or I could make an argument saying I would rather have a pump working on the brush truck than an extra set of hose. What good is a hose if the pump doesn't work?
Okay.
All right, I
Is
think,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing. Like
Sure.
Bob, I remember these lines getting created. It was about 10 years ago. And the reasoning behind them was, at that point, money wasn't being spent on these items at all. And the fire department got way behind in making sure they had gear that fit their people and that they had enough hose. So I understand Bob's concern, but I think if Lenny's managing it and if the finance committee is asking appropriate questions, I think it might be possible if Lenny can get if he can make that work for 3 new sets of turnout gear.
right. Jim, did you have?
Yeah,
another
yeah,
comment?
yeah, to these most recent points, again, we in the finance committee, we typically have an agenda topic each week to go through the cost report. And usually in advance of that, we get an updated cost report from Becky. And we have the opportunity to go through each one of these lines across all the departments and see anything that is, we want to might raise questions on, whether we're spending too much or too little. And then we can raise that during that part of the meeting, during that cost report review section of the meeting, and say, why are we up or down by $400 in turnout gear? And then Becky might have an answer. She frequently does. And if she doesn't, then she goes back and finds an answer. So there are ways. I think we have a system in place for some of these small items that if we do have
But I
questions
guess-
or concerns, there's a way to address them.
I guess the point being, though, that if we did make this change, we wouldn't have that level of specificity for these lines, because our expense reports would reflect that consolidation of into one line. I don't see it as a problem, to be honest with you, but just to speak to your point, Jim, I think we probably would lose the ability to monitor how much is being spent on turnout gear versus fire hose replacement versus air tanks, if we made this change. To me, that sounds
Well,
a
we
little
wouldn't
bit
see it.
like,
We wouldn't see it on the cost report, but if we saw something in that line, whatever we
Yeah.
choose to call that line in the future, and
Yeah.
it's high by 2,000 or it's low by 2,000.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Then we said this, okay, let's dig into this and see what's driving the change versus budget.
Right, exactly. And I think to me, that's a sufficient level of kind of monitoring that we need to do. To me, it almost sounds a little bit like we're micromanaging the department if we're trying to look at, well, are they up or down a couple $100 for air tanks, or I think if it's appropriate, I think I'll make a motion that we beginning with the FY24 budget, we consolidate lines 96 through 99 into one line, one equipment line, I should say, and fund that line at $18,600.
I'd second.
Okay, so well, I think we've got some further discussion here. Jim Hemingway?
Why not just consolidate 96 through 98 and leave 99 alone? That I think would be helpful to Lenny. And that would consolidate all of this sort of the turnout gear, hoses, and equipment are sort of in the same ballpark. And if you combine those three together, and then the equipment would be for miscellaneous things of one thing or another, and that at least would maybe help out. How about that?
It's not
Is
the
that-
same.
Yeah. I guess I'm just not sure what we're trying to, like, what problem we're trying to solve by having these separate lines for things that, oh, they, I mean, I think they're all sort of describing physical pieces of equipment. So I'm just not sure what problem we're solving by having two equipment lines, one for miscellaneous equipment and one for, you know, hoses and turnout gear and air tanks. But yeah.
Well, they're much more expensive equipment. Those three categories. It's sort of a different tier of equipment, I think. Whereas equipment in general, or the line 99 is just for a lot of miscellaneous stuff. It could be for who knows what, parts for the truck or.
But I guess if it was a single line and there was some unusual circumstances in one year, I mean, Lenny may choose to not, to spend less on, small little things, and there might be a need to spend a larger chunk of funds on something. I don't know. To me, it just seems like we ought to give them kind of maximum flexibility. We're not talking about giving them more or less money, but that's just how I'm looking at it. Bob?
Yeah, so I can't find the raise your hand on the Zoom
Okay,
here,
no
but
problem.
I'm not going to belabor the point, but I just want to say, remind everyone that historically, the reason these lines are there was the fire chief came to us and asked us to put them there because he saw these as capital expenses where he had to go through the capital process, and he wanted to build it into the budget to avoid that and to deal with it on a year-to-year basis in small increments. And he thought, and we agreed, and I think it was less than 10 years ago, Becky, because I recall at least some of these, I was present on the finance committee, which wasn't true 10 years ago. But, I think that that the request makes some sense, but I still like the idea of keeping them the way they are. But that's my view.
Okay. All right. So we've got a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Why don't we vote? Let's see. We don't have George tonight. So who do we start with?
I'm number one.
Okay.
Mhm.
Bob?
Bob, nay.
Oh. I'm still thinking about it. I'm sorry.
Okay. We can come back to you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful? Okay. Cashew, aye.
Closure, aye.
Walt and I.
Okay.
Here we go.
Jim, do you want to record a vote just for the notes, or you can abstain if you want? Or...
I think I'll abstain.
Okay. All right. So that motion passes 3-1-1. And so just to be clear, Lenny, we're working on the FY24 budget. And now based on this result tonight, we're going to just have a single equipment line under the fire department expenses group of accounts, and that'll be funded at $18,600. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Lenny.
Hey, thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
Is everybody set with the fire department?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
You too.
Thanks, Lenny.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, why don't we look at okay, we're gonna have to do this in a couple, I'm just trying to think. So let's look at the FY '24 budget. I'm gonna take it off the screen because I think I want to share the CapEx funding document that George prepared. All right. I think before we look at the budget, maybe we can kind of revisit this. We started our discussion last week about how we might fund these new capital projects. And so the new ones that have been recommended by capital planning or the elementary school flooring project, the backhoe for the highway department, and $20,000 of funding for the building committee. So George did a couple things here just since our last meeting.
Could you make it a little bigger?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. Let me do this. Okay, and then try going to 175. We could do it.
That's better.
That's better? Okay. All right. All right. So what did all right. So I think the things that George did is he added kind of year one debt service information for the, which I I guess right now only includes the school roof. So the only project in here that at least in the current form of this, just this worksheet here, that we're proposing to borrow funds is the school roof. So he added some debt service information on that. And let's see, row 16, he said, all right, so this updated, this transfer amount from the budget to capital stabilization. I think it was 55,000. All right, it's now slightly less than that. And then he updated the beginning balances on capital stabilization, I think using the expense report. Okay, so is anybody, are there any sort of new, we kind of just proposed this scenario last week. Are there any new thoughts that anybody has on, I guess, Jim Walton, you weren't at the last meeting, so I should just bring you up to speed. There are 3 projects that were approved by or recommended by capital planning. They are these 3 projects at the bottom of this list. The school roof obviously is still, this $750,000 cost number is the same placeholder that we had from last year. We don't have the engineer's report yet, so we don't have a revised cost estimate for what the project is. So this could change once we have that number. Becky?
We have an estimated, but
Okay.
it's not the final bid, so
Okay.
we probably should wait for the final bid.
For the school roof?
Yeah, the school roof asphalt section was the engineers, I think, estimated at 520. It was about 520, 525. But it's not, it's just a engineer's report. It's not the final estimate, you know.
And you just said asphalt, so that's not a complete project? Becky, what you just,
No,
So
that is it.
we split the school roof into two pieces. We took the gym roof first, and then the asphalt section we're doing now.
oh, okay.
Right, the
So-
gym is already funded and done, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Bob?
Yeah, so just to be clear, to me, that's a good development that the estimate is below what we
Yeah.
had been thinking about. So far, so
Yeah.
good.
That's
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah, Becky, when do you think that would be firmed up, that we could put a number in here that would be more
It'll
than
be
just,
a month. It'll
Okay.
be a month.
So the bids will be going out soon, the contract?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Mm.
All right.
That
I'm
sounds
gonna
like all good.
recommend that we keep this placeholder at 750,000 just to be conservative. And then it's great that we've got some indication that the actual number might be less, but let's, if it makes sense to you guys, let's leave it at this amount now, since we don't have an actual bid. Susie?
and I have a question, under the other, the thing that says year one total, I assume the next word was debt? I don't know what the, I can't tell if that message is connected to line 6 PFAS and poets, or it was another,
Oh, I see this one here.
you know.
So
I don't
this
know
is
what-
just debt service. Yeah, let's see, what is this?
Cause it isn't
Year one.
debt service. I mean,
No, you're right.
so I don't know what that word was, and I don't see how it could be just the PFAS and poets message, a note for that. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't looking at a
Yeah,
debt service of 500,000. That's not true.
Well,
no,
I think what he's referring to with other is that there's 200,000 from the state.
Yeah.
And
That note is over in column I. So I
Yeah.
don't
yeah,
know
and that's
what
what,
the,
and that's what the other is. That's represented in that column 500. Those two numbers, state funding and ARPA, totaled to
Yeah.
500.
yeah.
I
but-
think I think Susie's asking about this cell here,
yeah.
which is confusing. I suspect that it's like an extraneous or typo kind of thing, because it
Okay.
doesn't.
Doesn't
I'm having a
fit.
hard time,
Right, okay, I got it. then.
seeing what else that would be. So I think
It's
for
probably
now
just in
let's
the wrong
ignore it.
place.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think for now let's just ignore it.
Okay. Ignore.
Okay. So Jim, so these are the capital planning recommended funding, lines 9 through 11, at an amount not to exceed these values. You can see here for each project. I think there was pretty much consensus in our discussion that the $31,000 for the flooring and the $20,000 for the building committee ought to be funded from free cash. And so that's what, so I don't think there was any discussion of funding that in any other way. So there was discussion of funding the backhoe with capital stabilization funds of $120,000. And this would leave our free cash reserves at 10%, and our stabilization reserves at 7.3%. If we were to do that. Any new thoughts on those, at
Yeah.
least
But
those
in
initial?
the
Yeah.
tool, I don't understand that one either, because in the tool on line
Mm-hmm.
24, it says capital stabilization and only says 65,000, but in the upper part, it has the 120 under capital stabilization. So what am I not understanding there?
Transfer from free cash, I think.
So this 120, you're right.
No, it's all
let's
under
see.
capital stabilization column.
you gotta go to C24.
C24. right here. Yeah, isn't that
Is
Yeah.
there any,
65?
That's,
are there sums there? Could you click on that and see if there's a formula on
That's
C20?
pointing to E19. So let's see, what's E19? Cash use
Okay,
increase.
so it's.
Yeah,
it's
he's
a net
adding,
amount.
he's doing a transfer. There's a transfer from the operating
Oh, that's
budget to
right.
capital stabilization.
Yeah, so Susie, okay, right,
okay, I
that's
see
right.
it now. Yep, I
Yeah.
got it.
So he's assuming that we're gonna transfer almost 50, well, just over $54,000.
How did he come up with that
Capital
number?
I can
Set down
tell
to
you.
n-
Yeah,
Mhm.
Becky, can you tell us where that number comes from?
Yeah, so remember the 112 debt, 112,625, our debt capacity
Oh.
line?
Yeah,
The annual, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
the annual.
Okay.
So what else is, the other thing I put in the budget was the debt for the truck from last year, which
Mhm.
is, it's on page 4. And it showed, and I had to use an estimate because Ryan was waiting to hear back from our loan officer. But he thought it was a good one. It's $45,000 for the principal and 13,500 for the interest. So we subtracted the 45 and the 13,500 from the 112 and reached the new balance of for transfer for capital stabilization of 54,195.
got it.
Okay, so that basically keeps, from a budget perspective, but year-to-year budget change, there's no change by using this number.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. If we didn't have that transfer, the budget would increase.
Correct.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Becky. Okay. I think just one thing to mention, and Becky, you might have an update on this, is it sounds like there's some interest in entertaining a new capital project for the elementary school. I know that Bob and I don't think, well, I know I can't attend capital planning tomorrow, and I think Bob said he is not going. Is that something that you think is going to move, is going to
Yeah,
move forward?
Their request is for, it's, I think they round it, it's for about 55,000 really. They're asking, they were uncertain if there were gonna be any other additions to it, so they're asking for $60,000 for security camera system for the elementary school, and they are feeling very urgent about this issue. They have had they've confronted vandalism quite a bit last year. And just for the security of everyone, they've determined that this is the best course of action. They've been talking about the cameras and trying to get ready for this since the beginning of the year. But they had only gotten the request for the phones to capital planning. They hadn't gotten the other request to capital planning, but I think it's an urgent need that there, it's an emergency situation because of all the things that are going on. And
There's no existing camera system at the school at all, so this is
correct,
starting from
nothing.
scratch. Okay.
Nothing.
All
The
right, but-
security amounts to that the fact the doors can lock automatically.
Okay. All right, Bob, before I get to you, Susie, do you have info from school committee that
Yeah, I
additional
know.
info that you want to share? Yeah.
Well, they did debate it, and I thought because it wasn't on tonight's agenda and it hasn't gone to capital planning, that it wouldn't be on our agenda tonight.
Okay.
I was thinking it would be after it goes to capital planning as well.
All right, Bob, I think you had your hand up first, so let me go to you and then Jim.
Okay, first of all, I can't make the capital planning meeting, which was announced yesterday, because I'll be on the traveling, so I won't be able to participate. But I must say I'm somewhat irked about the process that we set up and is delineated in our bylaw, which is that all requests from capital planning committee should be submitted before February 1st. Now, that is clearly in our bylaw. This has been presented as an emergency, but it's also clear from my reading of the document that it's been under consideration and studied for quite a while. Why are we not told about these things in a timely way? Why are they thrown at us at the very end of it, after the capital planning actually announced that it was completed its process and had made its report to the finance committee? Now this other request comes in from nowhere, and we're supposed to drop everything and then address this. And I don't think it's really respectful of the committee, of the volunteers on the committee, and I don't think it's really a good way to do financial planning. If it's a true emergency, that's one thing, but this is obviously something that's been under discussion for a long time. I think it should just wait and go through the process next year. And it really is annoying to have all these things added, all these emergencies come popping up, oftentimes without documentation or without proper vetting process that we are obligated to perform. So that's my opinion on that one. And I won't be able to participate in the meeting because, first of all, I've got other things to do. Secondly, I actually will be traveling and I won't be able to participate.
All right, Jim and then Susie.
Okay, where was, Susie, were you part of the same discussion? If so, let me go behind you.
Well, I did
Okay.
want to say that from attending the school committee meetings, the school has been very busy this year, getting the phones, doing all the research for that. And then the school ended up paying for that. And then it's kind of a clear the deck mess of things to do. And so when they looked into security cameras, Debbie Lee, who is a very thorough person, after the phones, which she was greatly the center of getting done, after that, she started into finding out about security systems, which has levels of security that she didn't know about. Even the installers have to be vetted. And so it is a process, and it is a process using humans who are trying very hardest to do it. And the issue around security cameras did come from, I believe, the safety, I don't know.
The safety committee.
Safety committee, but the fact that the phone system didn't work was very pressing, and they took care of that. And so it's just about a human endeavor, and people are taking things as carefully as they can, and it's very hard to work on simultaneously. And for most humans, they just want to do one thing, get it done, get it clear, and then they moved on to the next. And it is upsetting at some level, but I feel that the safety committee, I don't know how many years that's been in existence, but I believe not that long. And so they're taking
No, it's
things,
been there forever, Susie.
but did it have the
It's been
people that,
reinvigorated with, I guess.
right? And it also has had new people come on. So when it's a small town human endeavor, and it's no lack of effort. So I feel like understanding the background right now for security cameras in schools, and with the shootings that have been going on, it feels very urgent, and it feels very urgent to the parents too. So they had to look at all the issues that would be around that, privacy and safety, and they are feeling it's right now.
Becky?
I just want to say that I did encourage, they were feeling that they had no other option than to either wait next year because of the town's processes, or have to use choice funds or try to figure out funding on their own. And when I was at the meeting for another reason, hearing them, I encouraged them to reach out and see if the committee would meet or not. Ellen was receptive to setting up a meeting, and so we moved ahead. But,
All right.
that's why we're here.
All right. So I'm going to get Jim. I'll get to you just one second. I think, look, we don't have a recommendation yet from capital planning. So I just want everybody to be aware of the possibility that that they may come to FinCom with a recommendation to fund that project. In which case, it sounds like we're gonna have about a 60K capital item to add to this funding, funding analysis. I mean, I guess one question would be, would there be some value to us adding that item to this chart right now and having a preliminary discussion about how we would fund it, or should we just wait to hear from capital planning? Becky?
Well, I'm not sure if we have a quorum for capital planning tomorrow
Yeah.
night. So just to put that out there. And the second thing, I know at your last meeting, I mentioned that we are also trying to, through RFPs and RFQs, trying to figure out request amounts for the drawdown environmental issues at the lake, as
Mhm.
well as
Right.
potential for additional PFAS money needed next year. So there are a couple other big ticket items that will be coming. There will be warrant articles at annual town meeting that aren't
Okay.
capital, but will be significant costs.
All right, do we think we'll have numbers for at our next meeting, which is what, is that would be May 2nd? I think we'll have to, right? On
Well,
those other
we will
items?
estimate numbers and then we'll
Yeah.
have to, by the middle of May, closer to before the final warrant is done, we might be in a position that we'll have to use our estimates and put in numbers at annual town meeting.
Got it.
But hopefully not. Hopefully we'll have them.
Okay. All right, Jim Walton, did you have a comment or
Yeah, I
question?
did.
Yeah.
But are we finished with this specific subtopic or?
I think we're finished with the school camera
Yeah,
issue.
okay.
Yeah.
I had, first, I just want to say thanks for just spending a little bit of time going through what you all covered last time regarding the capital projects and funding sources and whatnot. And just looking through all this, I fully support where you ended up. As far as the numbers and which accounts they come from, the fact that ultimately right now, the way this is set up, it won't impact the budget. Most of the spending for this go around for these projects is mostly capital spending. Though we still, based on what you have here right now, and that seems appropriate. If we look at the capital stabilization, and free cash, we end up with balances that look within our guidelines for all three. So again, I support where you ended up.
Could I
with this
request that
proposal.
somebody email that spreadsheet to me? I did not see that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, George sent this to me, so
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I will forward it to the whole committee.
He said, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'll pull this down now because I'm not sure I think we're feeling good about the projects that we know are going to have warrants at annual town meeting, but I think we all have sort of awareness here that there may be additional projects that we'll need to discuss at our next meeting in terms of how we're going to fund additional capital projects that we're going to have to discuss how we'll fund it. Okay. So why don't I share the expense budget? Okay. So Becky, this is the version that I think number 3 that you shared during our meeting last week. I'm assuming this is the most up-to-date version that we have. Is there a new one?
I'm working on
days?
changes, but I wanted to hear everything tonight and then
Okay.
and then try to share my changes with you tonight.
Okay. Are there any additional comments or questions that folks have come up with since looking at this last week? Becky walked us through some of the main kind of significant changes. Wondering if folks after our meeting had any additional thoughts or questions or concerns they wanted to raise. Or any specific budget line that they wanted to discuss. All right, Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to revisit something that I brought up last week, and that is my confusion about the various lines that represent building repair, including, as you may recall, I said that I thought that the building committee should be funded to the line at the very end of this document. I don't have it in front of, I'm not at my desk, so I don't have that in front of me, but there's that line, and there's also a line in the town hall that Becky says is her line for repairing things at town hall. I don't see why town hall should not be included in the building committee's line. It's just one of the town's buildings. It's not any different than any other ones that require upkeep and repair. But I think that capital expense that's been proposed, that's in the spreadsheet that we just saw, should
Right,
be
the 20K.
Yeah, that 20K should be coming from free cash, and it should be going into one of these lines. So which line would it go into? That's what I need to, and why can't we consolidate those lines?
So I guess, Becky, can you clarify if we're going to have a warrant at town meeting, soon if it gets approved, $20,000 is going to be transferred from, at least what we're recommending is free cash into, is it this line 177 that I have on the screen right
Right.
now? Or is it a different
Line
line?
177 is
Mm-hmm.
a budget line, but is not in the expense report. There is,
see.
that line exists as a fund.
Mhm.
That way, the money can be spent over time and you don't have it flowing back into the general fund. If the building committee were not to, not to use the funds on projects in a given year, that money just sits there. If that
Right, and
money, if
carries
that had
over.
been the case, it was a line in the expense budget that we were filling all the time, that money would just be going back to the general fund every year if a project's not done. That didn't happen. It's that 20,000 sat there for quite a while, and now we're able to use it. So it's a project-based line as it's supposed to be. The town hall repair line is like all the other issues in town hall, like the equipment maintenance line and the town hall repair line. Which I've been going over, equipment for town hall has become, much more expensive since we got the elevators and the lift. And some years, we spend $8,000 on the elevator and the lift and leaving almost nothing for the repairs or other things that have to be maintained at town hall, like all the plumbing, all the electric, all the heating. The heating has regular, and it's not just town hall. I'm talking about all town buildings use these lines. The town, the repair line is not just for town hall. It's like when I have to get the furnace cleaned at another building, if I have to get different things done at Old Town Hall, like when I have to call in Jamrog to figure out why the mini split in the vault is not functioning. I mean, there's a lot of reasons and things that go wrong in our, old buildings. The town hall is going on 75 years old and needs a lot of assistance just to be maintained. So I think Bob's confused, minor repairs that cross over into maintenance of the building is what is under the responsibility of the town administrator. The other line that's under the responsibility of the building committee is the fund, the project fund that's in Fund 30 and not part of the operating budget.
Meaning line 177, correct?
Oh,
Correct.
no.
Line 177 is not part of our expense
Right.
report. It's in our fund.
Oh, I understand the clarification. Thank you, Becky. What I'd like to request, and I suppose I'll request it through you to the building committee, since they're asking for, a considerable sum of money in addition to what's already in their revolving account or their fund, as you put it. I'd like to know what projects and what attendant costs are going to be funded through this request instead of just having a blank check. I'd like to know what it is we're funding. Is that something they can provide us with?
Yeah, I think that came up last meeting, and I think
Yeah, and the things, I
Becky,
told you the things
yeah.
they have on the table so far, and they're reviewing some other issues. They have the 2 windows at the front of Town Hall. It's about $5,500. They quoted.
No,
we-
I'd like it in writing from, I don't need, thank you, but I think they should submit something in writing to us, so an email or a list or something.
Ooh,
I'm
is that-
sorry,
is that-
Bob.
Is that extraordinary for $20,000? I mean, come on.
It's just something you never did.
We did so, and we asked for a big lump of money. We had specific projects to
And
fund.
you got up on Town Hall and you described them. You never
Yeah.
reported in writing.
Okay,
to the
well,
finance
I
committee.
just,
I'm just saying that it's just, the irony is interesting.
not
and
ironical.
I
We had
appreciate
specific,
your request and I will get you the information. I don't have new information from what I shared last week.
again, this came up at the last minute, after we had supposedly closed capital planning process, and we had no documentation, no list. We're supposed to have a form, we're supposed to have a list, we're supposed to have a description and a detailed supporting documents, and we didn't have any of those. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for them.
Jim Hemingway.
Yeah, I have just some minor questions having nothing to do with what's just been said. Line 37.
Okay, let me
Um,
scroll up.
I
Okay,
was curious as to why the longevity bonus is the highest one I've ever seen. Is it because of, there must be a reason for it. But usually the longevity bonuses are in the $500 to $750 category. Why is this one $1,250? Becky, you might know that.
Becky.
Because that's for 45 years.
It's
And we had to extend, we extended the longevity bonus, which tapped out originally at 25 years. Over these past 20 years, we've gone up to 45 and Ellen's halfway to 50.
okay. Well, I thought that was it, but I thought I would check.
And that's part-time. So that's half of what it would be if it was a full-time person.
I see. Line 82, why is the police chief getting a 5% increase
sorry.
for COLA and everyone else is getting 3%? Is there a contractual thing going on there?
mhm.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And thirdly, on line 135, tell me about the waste disposal Lotto 32 for $5,000. What is that?
Okay,
Or-
so that had been to clean up. It back in 22, that money was used, or was that in 21? I can't see the years here.
Let me see if
I
I can
think we
scroll
went up
down.
2 years.
Does that help? Let's see. We'll get a little shorter. All right, so it's this line here.
So it was
130.
the actual in FY 21 was 14,830, which had been money that had been in, I believe in the budget prior to that. And then, okay, so that was the budgeted amount and then the actual, okay. Okay, so that was used to help do additional cleanup at Lotto 32 back in 2021. And then I'm requesting more because there's all this talk that there's more cleanup to do. From what I understand, it might go to us, so this would give us some money for waste management. And that would be part of, individually there would be additional potential permitting or LSP work, but the actual cleanup itself is what I estimated at 5,000 there. There's actually another line item that I would like to introduce tonight for consideration, which is the hazardous waste disposal at the fire station. I have to do reporting this year. I have to, we just have to do some water tests and then a report has to be written. And part of what happened the year that the finance committee removed a number of accounts was that the fire station ongoing account was removed from the operating budget. And when we came to the end of our resources, I now have an annual payment of $980 required by DEP for the fire station, which is the temporary solution ongoing amount. But this year, so I'm going to be asking for another $5,000 for the fire station because I have to hire an LSP to write the reports. I have to have the report, the water tested, and I have to pay the $980 fee ongoing. So it would
So that
be,
would be a new item that would be added to this solid waste kind of category, or, yeah,
yes,
got it.
that'd
Okay,
be hazardous waste, fire station, and ongoing, I would ask for the $980 annually. And then in the fourth year, I would make this request so I could do the testing and environmental work that needs to be done.
okay.
Oh, excuse me,
Jim,
I
did you
just want to, could I just break in to say I have to leave so long?
Okay,
Uh,
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Night, Becky.
Jim, did you have all your questions answered there? Or did you have any other lines?
Yeah, is that 5,000 for the waste disposal, is that for the library site, or is it for the military site that's just to the at the southern end,
This would be for the library site.
the library site?
Susie?
I wrote the minutes and thought I expected to have edit help because I guess I don't understand all the different building funding ones. So we looked at line 177 and the $5,000 isn't in proposed FY24, I don't believe. It's not, so then, and then I don't understand where the $20,000, if they're supposed to end up with is that going to end up to be 20,000 or is there yet a different line? I understand the town hall building one, I got that, but I don't understand that 5,000 and the 20,000.
I don't believe there is a 5,000. If you go back and look at that line, that's
It's
in
off.
like 1920,
Yeah.
19.
That's what I'm seeing. We were highlighting it.
Correct.
But it's a zero. So now, so will that line turn into the $20,000
Yes.
suggestion that we're
Transfer.
making on an ongoing basis? You're on the wrong line. That's library building fund. We're down one.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
176.
177.
No, sorry, it's 177.
Yeah.
I think I
that-
said
that's where
176 earlier.
20,000 would go.
That's where, okay, right.
You got it.
I think I do understand it then. Okay, so 20,000 will go there. It'll be operating cost, so it'll be in the operating budget?
No,
No,
it's
No,
not. an
because
op-
it's going to be a capital expense, right? So it's going to be transferred from free cash into that line after town meeting, correct?
Yeah.
so
Right,
it's
because
not
it's-
planning to
This
be an
is a
ongoing.
line- This is a fund. Okay, so it is presumed to be ongoing to the fact that some years it's 20,000. And then there are all these years where we didn't use it much of it, so we just kept adding, 2 different years, we added the 20,000.
Okay, so we're expecting to hold this
I'm sorry, we
line
added the 5.
in the operating budget, funded from free cash as needed, and the amount will not always be the same.
Correct.
And but just for the purpose of the FY '24 expense budget, we're not adding anything to that line because, right, because this is a
Free cash.
capital request, and if approved by town, there will be a transfer that occurs after town meeting in accordance with that vote. Is that correct? Yeah.
Don't we usually,
So see, it's varied, AJ. So
Okay.
if you have to be really, so if it's part of the budget, like the 5,000s, we were able to squeeze those into the budget.
Right.
Okay, so but in other years, when it's all coming from free cash or the funding source isn't gonna be the budget, then the 20,000 will be a warrant article
Right.
and
And
not,
that's what's happening this year, right?
yeah, right. And we're not gonna fill that number in because it's
Correct. Yeah.
well,
That was my understanding. I just wanted to verify that was the
and
case.
so
And
isn't,
even if we did, see, this is where it gets a little tricky because transfer to capital projects are below.
Mhm.
So these are transfers and it shouldn't, it shouldn't impact the bottom.
tra-
Right.
what do you mean by transfers for capital projects are below? Below what?
They're below the line that says transfer to capital projects, line 175. So we're trying to be clear
Okay.
that,
I see.
Oh, and that's a Fund 30.
yeah.
So
it's
it really
fine.
ends up showing up on Fund 30 page.
Right. So
Okay.
it's not part of the operating budget.
Maybe you could bold that title, because it's really not, it's not a line of itself, right? It will never have an amount by itself. It's always what's underneath that line.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
line
mean, I think
175 is a title, and 176 and 177, and if some of the project came up, it'd be underneath that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So we should almost treat this as a header,
right.
kind of like how we do with miscellaneous here, for example. Like it doesn't have a budget. It doesn't have an expense line, right?
And I think, yeah. So,
Okay,
or we could even just take it out.
I think we should
because-
take it out, because it looks like,
Yeah.
because this is called our operating budget.
Yeah.
And I got confused by that.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
take this out because these 2 lines, well, it's good to have it because of the transfer to capital stabilization, but all of these are in the budget. All of these lines have been in the budget.
Right.
So I think, I think it's a good note to have. I think we could bold it, but
Can it be a note below the word gap? Can it just be a little box, just a box by itself with that note?
we'll see. In the end, if we were to, potentially these lines, if they're funded in the budget, they're not transfers anymore. The
Right.
only one which will always be a transfer is a transfer to capital stabilization.
So in other words, there may be some years where we are going to, outside of the capital planning process, we may choose to contribute or build a contribution to this fund in a certain amount. And so we would see that in that year's expense budget, right? But
Potentially.
in this year, right, potentially, but in this year, we're not, that's not how we're dealing with it. We're dealing with it because there's a capital request that's going to be voted on at town meeting. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But when it
Okay.
was a smaller amount that was being requested, that the town could, I mean, because part of George's thing was always been to try to level it off. So just finding ways to keep it consistent so you don't have big jumps.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments about any individual lines in the budget that folks wanted to ask about?
Oh, boy.
Hey, George.
Sorry, I'm late.
No problem. So we just were going through the FY24 expense budget, and I'm taking various questions. Did you have any specific line items that you wanted to discuss tonight or had a question about?
No, one line I was curious about was in regards to the head assessor and what the plan was for funding the head assessor next year, because I know we haven't been able to find one. And I know that we're talking about a consultant, so I was wondering if we had information about that. And then the other question would be Grace Banachek's request for a position. And I know the personnel board's meeting Thursday to talk about that, but I was wondering if you talked about that. So those would be the two lines I was curious to talk about.
Oh, no, you just reminded me about Grace's request. We have not discussed that. So you said the personnel committee is gonna discuss that at your next meeting?
Yeah, that's agenda item for Thursday. Right now, Becky, I don't know, maybe you know, there's a question mark about whether we're going to have a quorum or not.
It's up to Melissa and I haven't heard back.
Yeah, she's been contacted 3 times and she hasn't responded to anybody. So I'm having doubts about that meeting.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on it.
All right. I mean, my instinct is that it's probably not worth discussing tonight until the personnel committee has had a chance to review it and made a recommendation, right? But it's sort of, there's a sort of placeholder there. We may be needing to discuss that change to the budget. And any other? Yes, sorry, go ahead, George.
If I may just finish, my only question would be, do we have an idea of how many hours and what the impact would be financially, just so we have kind of in our mind what that would do to the budget?
It's, I can give you a number in just a second.
You know, just so when we're trying to finalize this.
Because it'll be the exact salary, might fluctuate, but I'm just gonna do. Approximately 9,620. She's asking for the position as approved by the personnel board and I'm sorry, as approved by the select board is a 10-hour-a-week position.
520 hours. Okay. Thank you, Becky.
Sure. And George, as far as your question about the admin assessor, we are slowly gaining some ground maybe with a consultant. So there'll be more discussion at the next Board of Assessors meeting regarding that.
Tomorrow night.
It'll be, yeah, there'll be some discussion, not too much though.
Yeah, it is tomorrow night, right, Becky? It is.
Susie?
Um,
I feel like, the entire town has to be flexible to meet needs. And we don't always see things coming, but I would like to, put in our letter that goes out in September that as we get to the end of the year, I mean, I really feel we shouldn't discuss things until the appropriate committee does. So the personnel board will discuss this town clerk position, and capital planning will discuss the cameras. And the fact that it's hard to get a quorum at this time of year is true. And so I wonder if we should put something in our letter that says, you know, this is our goal. We're striving to get as much information so that when we come to this time of the year, when it's harder to meet quorum and schedule meetings, we have pretty much our work, our information about our work already in hand.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a good idea to me. Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about our ability to address a couple of these things in the amount of time that we have left, but in the budget season here. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay. Actually, George, since you just joined, we had one question about your capital funding worksheet, if I could just ask you. It was about this cell. We assume this was some kind of a sort of under the other column, there was this note, year one total debt service. That I've just highlighted here. We assume that that was just some kind of typo or something. Oh, I think, are you muted, George? We can't hear you.
I'm not muted. You can't hear me?
Okay.
We can.
Now,
hear
now I
you.
can. Yeah.
Okay, that was a mistake. I
Okay, yeah, I
wondered
thought
why
so.
it was missing in cell J, whatever, to the bottom right of it. I must have not noticed it. I did that
Okay,
while I was looking on the piece.
Okay.
yeah,
Makes it
no
easier.
worries. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, great. And just to let you know, George, I mean, I think, you know, there's, at least my reading of the discussion is that I think people feel good about the decisions we made last week, or at least the tentative preliminary decisions we made last week about how to fund these three capital items. There's kind of a sense that there are going to be some additional items that we're going to have to discuss at our next meeting on top of what we have here. And so one of them is related to what kind of the work that Becky introduced last week or at the culvert, and then the other being a new request that the elementary school is trying to push forward, which is for security cameras at the school. Anyway, so we may have to revisit this at the next meeting.
We did have the
Okay.
culvert. Okay,
Sorry, say that again.
I was gonna say, I thought the culvert was fully funded, or did the price go up?
It's the drawdown issue and the permitting for LSPs and trying
Right.
to, you know, appropriately respond to Concom's request.
Okay. All right. So I think we're ready to kind of move on to other topics tonight. So let's see. Why don't we actually just we've got minutes that we've got to deal with. So why don't we?
Do you want to, when we're
ahead.
reviewing the budget, do you want to review the revenue now? We didn't review the
Oh.
revenue.
Sure. Yeah. Let me pull that up. Okay. All right, Becky, is there anything you want to highlight here, or do you want to walk us through this? Or because guess what assumptions
Sure.
were made?
So for just the mechanical process, as you can see, we receive, so basically you start by closing out the prior year, FY '23, as once the recap was finished and I got all the local receipt numbers. When you close out, you confirm what the new growth for the last year was. So for FY '23, we had 56,000 in new growth. So we came to our property tax levy limit, the $6,011,000. And then you take that number, and that's your previous levy before debt exclusion in building for FY '24. Then you take, you calculate 2.5%, the 2.5 of the levy. And then you add in a new growth. And when you do it when you're beginning a proposal for the new year, you estimate. And I went back to the 40,000 that we used to estimate until we dropped to 10,000 for a while. But 40,000 in this climate of things going up and down might work for us this year. And then you total those up for the property tax levy limit total, 6,201,709. In this section, we have a look at then going back to FY '23, we have a new total assessed value of 293,272,582. And that was the number used to establish our $18.44 tax rate. I carried that forward to this coming year because it's likely to be the closest number we have, given the fact we won't know the final number until the fall. The levy ceiling is a little difficult right now. In fact, when I looked at the levy ceiling figure for FY '24, because the DOR pre-populates going into the next year, but in FY '24, I'm reusing the FY '23 amount because what's told on the spreadsheet is 0, and 0 really doesn't work. It doesn't make much sense, but it's what happens when when your numbers are in fluctuation. It's never happened before. I mean, it happened the first year that it looked like we were about to hit 25. So I'm sorry, I can't explain why they give us a 0, but I don't use the 0 here because it doesn't make any sense. So I use the same levy ceiling from the prior year, and that's worked until they come up with the exact new one. So anyway, you take your total levy and then you work through your debt exclusions. The debt exclusion and then you add it to the tax levy. This debt exclusion that we carry is from our regional assessment. And this one is, it's a regional debt assessment. And this is the number we're very nervous about its potential to increase dramatically in the coming years with all the new fields and capital on the back.
That's this 34. That's
Yeah.
this 34,000. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think in 2 years it was projected at over 100,000. But that number keeps changing. They keep dropping it and the big number keeps going farther out for now. Okay, so then we come up with our maximum allowed levy, including our debt exclusion. We subtract out our excess levy capacity. And we come up with our tax levy. We subtract our $40,000 overlay. And then this is the levy amount that we will take forward, adding to our other revenue. Any questions at this point?
I think Susie and George have their hands up. Susie, you want to
So-
go first? Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't yield a tax rate yet, right? There's no tax rate on this picture.
No. We could, but you have all you need at this point.
Yeah, well, Susie, I'll follow up on that. Number one, Becky, line 8, levy ceiling. I think you have to use 7,331,000 because levy ceiling, having taken the assessor's course, is $25 times the assessed value of the town. And if we're going to use 293, 272, then we have to use 7,331 as the ceiling. So I think that's the right number to use.
So you're saying as long as we're assuming this is the
Yes.
total assessed value again. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes, then we would have to really multiply that times 0.25 or 0.025, and we're going to get to 7731. And Becky, this excess levy capacity, that's not the final excess levy capacity for the current budget, because I think the revenue at the bottom of this doesn't equal expenses yet. Is that true?
Right.
So we don't have a balanced budget. So the point for everybody is we're showing a
Yeah.
decrease in excess levy capacity from 640 to 626. But I actually think when we balance the budget, the 626, correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, will increase and be closer to the 640 or maybe even higher than the 640.
I don't think I agree,
Okay.
but I can't move this around to look at the other line, so I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. And we'll see it in the future, but I think it's subject to change. The 626, I think, is subject to change because your bottom line revenue is greater than your bottom line expenses. So we're going to be able to roll back some of the revenue, unless this has changed since the last time I saw it.
I did make, I think
What
two $5,000 changes that I'm hoping to make. I mean, I'm looking at, we went through the, what was it? It was there were two 5,000. One was for hazardous waste and the other was for cleaning up of Lotto 32, and each were $5,000. So I
Okay.
think that $10,000 changes where we're at.
I think we're going to come very close to the 640 actually, because I think when I was doing the report, the FinCom report, I went in and I adjusted excess levy capacity so that we get a balanced budget. And I think the difference was like $9,000. I think that's what the move was after the changes we made last week. So I think your 10,000 is going to be relatively close. And that's my prediction. So, but anyways, the point I think is really that everybody should remember is that that number is subject to change.
Yeah,
And then
that until the budget is fully balanced and final and you guys approve it, that is subject to change.
and then
We might get
thirdly,
another cherry state or a cherry sheet update before then, right? Before the budget? So the cherry sheet numbers could change too. No?
Yeah, the governor and House are in and the Senate still might come out.
yeah, the House is like within $1,000 of the governor for Shutesbury.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
It's pathetic. They raised the chapter 70 and then they lowered the school choice. So one hand gives and the other hand takes away. The tax rate can be calculated from what's on the schedule now, but as Becky pointed out, it's not done. But when I did it for the report, it came out to $19.05. And I think it'll probably come relatively close to that. It's probably going to be just over $19, which is a high estimate because valuations are probably going to go up. And so it'll probably end up being next November, probably less than 19. But what we're going to report on as things stands now would be $19.05.
What was it last year? Does anybody,
Yeah.
Eight-
go ahead.
what was it? 1844? Okay, yeah. Okay, Susie?
And 1844, and we thought it might be 2216. So things worked out in our favor and the tax rate didn't land as high as we estimated, but we like to prepare people for what it could be.
And you know why that was. The valuations. I mean, we used the prior year's valuation and that ended up jumping by $50 million.
And without having a head assessor, are we a little behind the 8 ball on getting our assessments that a good
Values.
what's it called? Yeah.
Yeah, the
value.
revals.
Yeah, we're counting it as the same as last actual year, the actual from
I
last
do that
year.
every year.
And will there be any likelihood that not having an assessor will make it more difficult to have it go upward?
No. I don't believe so. I think the assessor, the consultant we hired to do the job, Roy Bishop, did a very fair job. There are a couple odd things that we've been able to address with our angel admin assessor. And David Burgess has, where we have found there've been a few problems, David has been able to get to the bottom of them and fix them. We still have some concerns about software going into the new year with the conversion of software on Ellen's side. So there's a few questions still lingering, but I think because we have had these two consultants, we're in pretty good shape, Susie.
Okay.
But this total town assessed value is what we're gonna show in our budget that we present at town meeting, right? That won't update until after town meeting, correct?
It won't update until November
Okay, right, okay.
later.
All right. Any other questions on the revenue budget? Susie?
Just historically, we've gotten 2 budgets, one from the governor, one from Ways and Means. Historically, does the Senate tend to do us any favors, or are we just gonna call it even?
The Senate usually does the best.
Their budgets to be presented.
I'm sorry?
Do we know when we're gonna see their numbers? So far, we've got what? The House Ways and the House and the,
House came in last week on Friday, I think, and that was just, I'm just hearing it from all the town administrators. Everybody's like, really? You're sitting on all that money and we get nothing?
what we complain about all the time. They keep getting more and more money and they don't, they talk about helping the taxpayers and they do all these things to help the taxpayers on income taxes, but they do nothing for property tax.
Has the millionaire's tax made any difference or not? George, you'd probably would know the answer to that.
Doesn't look like it. Our
Yeah.
cherry sheet number is less than it was
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, I always, I thought the millionaires thing was a ripoff, right from the beginning. Because they didn't commit to towns and, for schools and roads and things like that. It was sort of tossed about, but there was no real commitment there, which means they're just sucking in money and we don't know where it's going. But it certainly
That
is
law
going
says it's
forward.
for education, but higher ed was very aggressive and got a big chunk of it.
Well. Yeah.
Susie?
And the UGA fund went down in the House Ways and Means. And I thought that was one that they could show their generosity, right? Isn't that where it would show up?
It should show up in the UGA. Unrestricted, here's some cash.
Right. And it went down on the House Ways and Means number.
Yes. I was shocked when I saw that. Disappointed.
All right, any other questions on the revenue budget before I take this down? No, okay. All right, let's catch up on minutes.
Well, we haven't looked at the lower part of the revenue budget. I didn't, when you said take it down, I thought you meant go down to the lower part of
Okay,
it. Because we
Sure.
asked questions at the levy part.
right.
I
Okay.
just had one minor question.
Yeah. Let me pull it back up.
And it was really in regards to the conversation we had with our Aaron Saunders. Hey, I was curious when he's coming back. And specifically, payment in lieu of taxes, when do they think that they're actually going to pass the legislation? And which fiscal year is that going to impact?
What did you just say, George?
So when we asked Aaron Saunders about payment in lieu of taxes from the state for all the state property, he's an advocate of changing it, and he understands that the rural communities are being hurt or not receiving their fair share. And he's said, yeah, we're working on it. There's a lot of people who agree. We got a plan. And I don't recall that we asked him, well, when is that actually going to take effect? And I was just curious if we had any idea, if you heard anything about that, Becky.
That's line 45. Is that what you're talking?
Yes, the 310,000 that we're using, which has been pretty level for, hasn't moved at all. But there's promises from the state to increase that line. And right now, that seems like the only hope of getting any money out of the state for our town.
I'll send that question to him. He might have overestimated whether he can get around to all the towns, and he didn't pick out a new day of the month. So I'll just send that question to him.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it could make a difference for us.
And no, I haven't heard
Right.
anything except for the regular political, chatter, but
Heck job. And
nothing actually happening.
my other question on this lower section is, we should be putting $15,000 in revenue on this schedule, right? For free cash to fund a portion of legal costs.
Yep, I'll have to make those additions down.
Where do they go?
They go
Line.
right here in
56.
the free cash warrant article section.
Yeah.
So
I have to
I'm
create
gonna
one for
figure out the
FY24.
old ones and set up the new ones.
Yeah, but above the FY22 line, just another line. And so that's another thing that will affect the excess levy capacity.
Yep. All right, I keep trying to change AJ's spreadsheet. So
All
I
right. Any,
make sure to do that.
any other questions?
Get it out.
Okay.
All right. Okay, why don't we quickly look at minutes from last week? What was that?
Well,
4/12?
you were shocked that you got them already, right?
Yeah, and they were quite lengthy. I guess there was a lot of discussion.
Almost like a stenographer, Susie.
Well, I try not to do that. That's a boring job.
Yeah, it is.
I had a question about 3C. I think the last sentence under that, I think didn't read like it. I think that there's something wrong with that sentence, basically. Rather than a blanket approval for projects without delays, there was some discussion about the
Without
inventory
detail.
process.
Not delays, without details.
Sorry, without details, sorry.
Mhm.
There was some discussion about the inventory process now in use will be able list project details.
To list project
Um,
details.
It will, okay. There was some discussion about the inventory process now in use will be able to list, okay. I think maybe,
More details.
Yeah.
In more detail.
There was
Yeah.
some discussion about whether the inventory process now in use will be able to list
Right.
No, we didn't discuss
Yeah.
whether it could do that. We discussed, this was a committee that started up and they just got their format approved by the select board, and they are now going through that process of listing those projects with very thorough detail. So
Yeah. Maybe we could just end the sentence at now in use and then a new sentence
Okay.
saying the committee will be able to provide project details or something like
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Okay.
Jim Hemingway?
Yes, Susie, 4D. You say the tick population is hard, and I'm not sure I know what that means. Do you mean assessing the tick population is difficult to do, or
No,
what?
no, let me look, please.
Okay,
I think you
Or-
said it's a bad year for the tick population.
Yeah, I think it meant to say high, not hard.
okay, all right, well, that's,
Yeah, that's my memory too. Yeah.
It is supposed to be a bad year from what I've been reading.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen any
All
yet,
right.
at least around here.
Yeah, me neither. I've been in
Surprise.
the woods.
Well, the
Oh, I
very
have,
dry
yeah.
weather was very helpful in that particular way.
Yes.
Not very good for the garden, but certainly hard on the ticks, which is good.
Yes, I agree.
Any other questions on the minutes? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
second
from
it.
April 12th.
Second,
All right.
Arvin,
George, you
I
want to kick us off?
Yeah, Arvin, I second.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
For sure, I.
Walton abstain. I wasn't present.
Okay. Great. Becky, I have a question for you. Was at our last meeting, we mentioned that the select board would be able to approve or discuss a request from FinCom to replenish our reserves, and that had to take place after, is it after May 1? Is that right?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
it's May 1.
Okay. Can we, just for the purpose of our sort of minutes, just to make sure we follow that, I follow up, is there a specific select board meeting that we should target for and try to get on the agenda to accomplish this?
So I'm trying to read my calendar.
Okay,
So your next meeting is May 2nd and their
correct.
meeting is May 9th. What has to happen is the two boards need to meet together. So if you want to suggest that meeting to be held on May 2nd, you can invite the select board to your meeting.
Okay. All right,
And
I
if
think I'll do that.
if they don't have a quorum or something available, then they can shoot for you guys going to their meeting on the 9th.
Okay. All right, and then what is our request? So is there a specific amount that we want to ask for? I feel like we discussed something in our last meeting, but I can't remember what that amount was. I didn't see it in the minutes, but is there, what seems like, I mean, we're at like $3,000 now, right? So what seems like a reasonable request to folks?
We indexed it to what the health insurance might be over. Do you have a round number for that, Becky?
It's over, but like $70,000, I believe. So
Is-
if you were to request like 30,000, that should be fine. It should
And is this something we can do multiple times? So if we did it,
do it again if you have an emergency. So, and you can wait until you have a need.
and
But it'll slow you down because of both committees have to meet together.
But it's something we usually do in July, is it not? We've done it in the past in July. So I mean, I agree with you. I'm not saying we shouldn't do a good chunk now, but we don't have to try and cover everything because we don't know what that is. We can always clean it up, any loose
Right.
things.
At this point, all you're trying to do is secure an amount of money that you feel comfortable with going into the last 2 months of the year. And knowing that we'll likely have, that you don't have to fund everything through the finance committee at the end of the year. You will meet with the select board again to clean up the year end issues where one line might be over and another under.
But isn't
Suzie?
this a transfer to the FinCom reserve in case something that was not inside the budget at all has to get met, as opposed to just a line falling short that's just a little bit of bookkeeping at the end?
Correct. This is a strategic, this has never happened before in my memory. But it's a tool that can keep the finance committee able to address needs or emergencies if they arise.
So could
So
I
if
make a
everybody-
motion? I think we're probably ready. Can I make a motion that
Yeah.
we plan on talking to the select board to move $30,000 into the FinCom reserve?
I'll second that.
So Becky, do you think that's enough? You do think that's enough?
I think
Even
at
if-
this point in time.
Okay.
I think if if there's other required emergencies, something can be made, something can be changed, but I can't quite, I can't envision anyone coming to you with more than that. Or I think that would be if you had multiple requests.
Mhm.
But I think it puts you back in where you can feel a little more secure.
Okay. There are no other comments. Let's vote on that.
Abernathy said,
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Walton, I.
Okay, great. All right, so I will reach out to Rita and invite them to our May 2nd meeting for this purpose. Okay.
AJ? Could
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
ask a quick question? I know
Yep.
that Melody has put in her resignation to the personnel board.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up just tonight. So let me mention that that Melody has communicated to me and to Paul her need to transition off the FinCom because of just stretched too thin. The expectation was that she would carry on through the end of April and then would transition off at that point. She wasn't at the last meeting and obviously isn't here tonight. So I suspect, although I haven't, doesn't confirm this, but I suspect that she may have transitioned off, and I'm not sure if she'll be attending. I mean, May 2nd is actually after her initial proposed end date, so I don't think we'll have her at the next meeting.
AJ,
yeah.
you didn't mention
Go
that she had an accident. She fell and hit her head and had a concussion, which really knocked her out of being able to participate here on a FinCom, let alone do many other things. So that also has a lot to do with why she's not here tonight, and most
thanks
likely won't be.
for mentioning that. Yeah, no, thanks for that's important information. So thanks for sharing that, Jim. So Paul and I are supposed to have a conversation soon, waiting to hear back from him on when about the process, but I think, you all should put the word out, and that there's at least going to be one one spot, one vacancy on the committee that'll need to be filled after town meeting. So that's that update. Okay, I think the only other thing to mention is that George got a great head start on our annual report. I really appreciate George, you sharing that with me. I'm gonna try to spend a little time on it myself before our next meeting, and then I'll distribute a draft for us to discuss potentially at our May 2nd meeting. So look out for that. Are there any other updates or discussion items? George, were you about to say something?
Yeah, well, I was going to say on that very subject, Becky, if you think you could send me an updated budget revenue expense by the end of this week, I'll just, the first 2 pages where we have the revenues and the revenue calculations, the tax rate and the changes, I'll change those things. They tie to the budget that we looked at tonight, AJ. And then the CapEx part obviously is subject to change. The cash balances will be subject to change. And then AJ, last year we reported full details on the library, and we also had a section on full details funding and full details on the roof. And I'm wondering if we still want to have that library section, and the roof section we obviously have to just wait and see. And then the very last part is the risk and opportunities is something that we as a committee should. So I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up what we'll be talking
about. Susie?
So it's good to have a head start. I do think it helps to have a couple of eyes and people sit down and talk about that, all of the text that comes after the first page of charts. And I'd be willing to do that. I find it very educational, so I invite other people to do that too. On this schedule, it says we might have that done by May 9th.
Right. So Susie, I'll share the document George sent to me with you. And did you want to kind of look at it independently and then exchange comments by email, or do you?
Well, usually what we have done is convene a subcommittee because it should be posted. Any work groups really are supposed to be posted if it's a few people doing work.
Okay. So I'd be open to that. Is there anybody else in the group that would want to meet offline as part of a subcommittee to just look at the draft annual report?
Well, of course I will.
Yeah, George, I know you. Yeah. Okay, so then I'll maybe we can just quickly look at our calendars and see if there's a date next week, possibly.
Any day next week's fine for me.
Okay.
And the week after is going to be hard for me. I'm going to actually traveling from May 2nd to May 8th, so I'm really not going to be able to do much during that period. I can do some on the side, but
so Tuesday, April 25th would work for me. Tuesday or Thursday.
Can we do Thursday? Would that be okay? Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
All right. You want to do like
What's the earliest?
10 o'clock or
AM?
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah. Does that work for you, George?
Yes. So the 27th at 10 a.m.
Are you talking a week from Thursday?
The 27th.
Yeah. At 10 in the morning?
Yeah.
10 a.m.?
Yeah. So this would be for anybody who wants to review and help work on a draft annual report document that the full committee will then discuss on May 2nd.
Okay.
Would you be interested, Jim? or-
Yeah, I'm gonna try, I'd like to try to join too.
Well,
I
it's
could-
gonna be,
Hmm?
I could.
it's
post
gonna be
it.
posted, so anybody who wants
Yeah.
to join, just join.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
post it.
yeah.
I'll post it and get a link.
Okay,
And hopefully we'll have more information, like, Becky will send me the updated budget and then, and revenue. And then maybe we'll get more information on the school. Is that a possibility?
So
Ruth?
which day,
We'll
which
see.
day are you doing?
Thursday,
The
the
27th
27th.
at 10
9
a.m.
days from now.
Yeah,
Okay,
And it's just, this is the text.
yeah,
This
we
is
won't
part of
have,
it.
we won't have the roof final amount yet.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
But we'll have it on, we're gonna get it on the 17th.
Right, and we're saying that this will get done by May 9th, so, this is the first round of, it usually takes 2 rounds of saying, oh, this should be in
Yeah.
there, it should be in there.
That's
In
fine.
terms of text, ideas,
right.
It's a
The
new
numbers are going to shift. Yeah,
And
Okay,
hopefully on the
great.
roof, they'll shift downwards.
yeah.
leads.
All right. Does anybody have any other updates or topics to discuss tonight before we adjourn? Any committee updates that need to be shared? We talked about capital planning already.
Well,
George, you
Personnel.
mentioned personnel, so, yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 things going on. There's the fire chief talking to us about a deputy position and which has already been filled. He wants to talk to us again. I'm not sure exactly what he wants to talk about on Thursday and specifically, and yeah, in Grace's position.
Okay.
and I
Any
just,
other updates? Yeah, go
wanted
ahead,
to say
Susie.
that the school committee also did approve paying some bills that came in for the HVAC system, I think to the tune around 23,000. They're gonna take care of paying that, so that will make that system totally done.
The
And it
HVAC, you
improves the
said?
school.
Yeah, the change orders, they've approved paying for the change orders to the project.
What about their telephone system?
That's paid for I think out of rural aid. Is that
Joyce.
right, Becky?
Oh, is there-
So that's taken care of. So now it's
Mhm.
just, now they're up to looking at the security cameras.
And how about their budget? Did they find any cuts? Did they decide that they can lower it?
Nope, no, I think they submitted that back in February and they voted that one and.
They did cut it from the first round.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the single largest thing, so.
Right.
Well,
anything
we're
that-
fortunate that the region is, the region, we used to have two-headed dragon to deal with.
True. So actually, the one thing where we did get help from the state on was transportation, right?
Yes, that offset some of the stuff.
Yep.
That's the only thing we got. Out of all the extra revenue, we got like $10,000 in transportation.
As every other town did too. They just.
I understand, but I'm just,
They focused on that. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess to their credit, they focused on that priority and everybody got some kind of benefit from it.
a pittance.
Mhm. All right, well, not seeing any other updates, so I will make a motion that we adjourn for tonight.
Second,
All right.
Right.
Do we
Have a
want
nice
to do a
day.
little vote? All right,
Hemingway,
Jim,
Aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, I.
Walt and I.
All right, 33.
Thanks, everybody.
8:30.
next
Susie,
week.
did you say you were gonna post that subcommittee meeting? Okay, great. So I don't need to deal with that. Okay. All
Okay,
right. So I'll see some of you on the 27th and everybody else on the 2nd.
Okay,
All right.
And
Sounds good.
Susie,
Night,
you'll
everybody.
need to Zoom on it.
You have a good evening.
we'll
Go
zoom.
Celtics.
Yeah.
yes, we need a
we'll
Zoom.
Sure.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
everybody.
Good night.
See y'all.
bye.
Good night. George, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
The PFAS folks